All right, in case you were trying to hear the president say Islamic extremists, he wouldn't take the bait. He wasn't going to put the words in that structure. We must not stigmatize, he said, entire communities. More communities should be involved in stepping up to address this scourge, and that we welcome people of all faiths. It is our country's history. It is our country, period. He also said we must counter violent extremism, ending with the notion that there will be an element of us stopping them in their tracks, not detailing what that element would be. But Rick Bonnell, hearing all of this, says Colonel McKnight, we're going to get to both, but Rick, to you first. Former top spokesman of the UN for 8 years in the Bush administration. Was that what you wanted to hear?
No, not at all. I mean, he was meandering, he was unfocused, he was weak. He literally, Neil, talked about isolating terrorists. We can't isolate terrorists. He won't even send them to Gitmo to isolate them. We need to kill the terrorists. He doesn't understand the threat that we face. I'd like to know over this last week if he's had his intel briefing, because that is a man who doesn't understand what we are up against. People are being burned in cages, and he's talking about more investments, empowering youth for greater service, entrepreneurship, not profiling. This is ridiculous.
Did you get a sense, and maybe Colonel Schaefer, I'm sorry, I misstated you there, that he wasn't so concerned with identifying who the extremists were, just that he was going to go after them, and that was good enough, and that we don't want to brand an entire religion by making the comment that these are Muslim extremists or Islamic extremists. These are just awful characters who besmirch a religion. Did that argument persuade you that he was getting the bigger threat without isolating it to just Muslims?
Neil, I don't remember the last time the Druids went out and started cutting people's heads off, nor the Buddhists. I am completely appalled at the president's inability to understand and focus. And he actually said something which I think is dangerous. We need to reject certain premises here. That is code for ignore. Look, let's be very clear here. The only nation I'm aware of which actually practices beheading as a part of official punishment is Saudi Arabia, Wahhabism. This all goes back to a very extreme sect of the Muslim faith. There's no war against the Muslims, Neil. He is actually setting up a straw man, which is completely false. You go on CNN right now, you go on MSNBC, you go on any of the networks. No one is saying the Muslims are wrong here. It is clearly ISIS. It is clearly Al-Qaeda. It is clearly the Muslim Brotherhood.
What would be the harm? Like in saying what the colonel just said, what would be the harm in just saying that?
Well, you know, I actually think that if I was a Muslim American, I'd be more offended by this speech, because you're putting me in this group. You're actually,
but he's saying, I don't want to put Muslim in front of it or Islamic in front of it, as if to say, only you guys are the bad guys.
Yeah, but what you're doing is that you're lumping me in with that terrible group. Look, if Christians were bombing something, I would immediately say they're not Christians. They don't get to speak
for my religion. Would you call them Christian extremists?
You know, I wouldn't object to someone who is trying to be an extremist by using the Christian name, but I would say, no, you're not a Christian, even though you're calling yourself, they're calling themselves Islamic radicals. That's
so, Colonel, where's this going?
Well, it's not going anywhere, unfortunately. I mean, there's a couple of the points here I want to hit real quick. First off, when he talks about not an individual issue, he's saying it's an individual issue. It's not an individual issue. These terrorists are very sophisticated, and he said himself, and he contradicted himself, that a lot of these terrorists, like Osama bin Laden and others, came from very wealthy families. So we have to understand the psychology of it. When he then goes back and says, well, we have to make sure the world is economically developed so we don't prevent this, he's talking against himself. It's not about economic development. It's all about the fact that these terrorists have figured out a vein to pull on and start bringing people in. It's these people who lack the understanding and lack their attachment to society. They have problems on their own. And there's a lot of people who are just not well adjusted. Therefore, these people have plugged into that. That's what their campaign is all about.
Well, that would put the pressure, and Rick, maybe you can pick up on this point, on those moderate Muslim forces.
Yes.
We're certainly seeing it. To your point earlier, out of Egypt, we're certainly seeing it out of Jordan. We're certainly seeing it now on and off out of the United Arab Emirates. So there are those who are saying, this is ridiculous. Enough is enough. And they have no problem saying, you don't speak for us. So, to your point, are they ahead of us on this? In other words, is the Arab world, the Muslim world, ahead of calling a spade a spade?
Remember that Syria has been unfolding for years. This problem of ISIS has been growing. The Arabs in the region have been extremely frustrated. I mean, go back and
well, they're concerned now that ISIS takes Libya, takes a country.
Yeah. Oh, no. Others are following. Remember, you go back, the Saudis won a seat on the Security Council and then said, we're not going to join the Security Council because the Americans are hypocrites. You've had a frustration in the Arab world and in the region for a very long time. Remember that what the president is speaking on today it's a speech to combat terrorism. The worst thing in the world to do, there's one thing worse than no action, and that's pretending like you're acting. Right. And we are not acting
well,
at all. Well,
that's a very good point, because it was that ending comment, and Rick was sitting here, and very nicely so, as were you, Colonel. When the one line that hit me was the president saying, there will be an element of us stopping them in their tracks. And I'm saying to myself, well, I hope you've got more than an element planned. Yeah. Because it's pretty bad out there now. What did you think?
Well, that's part of the issue, Neil, is that he's talking a good game, and I agree with your other guest. He's pretending to act. He's not acting, and it's making it worse. Again, I deal with the Association of British Muslims in London. They are appalled. They are much clearer in saying we need to stop this part of our religion being the Muslim faith. It's not about all Muslims. It's about the fact that we're not taking appropriate action, military and otherwise. Now, that's one point I agree with the president on. We need to do more than simply military. Good governance is important, but then, Neil, we help remove the governance in the region. We're destabilizing Syria more and more. We destabilize Libya. We created the space for these groups to gain traction. So our own actions led to this. We need to fix that and help get folks back into, get the terrorists out, get governments back.
Rick, real quickly, from your buddies in the United Nations, how do you think they would receive?
I know these guys, the diplomats over there, they're extremely frustrated with this administration.
That we're not leading the charge?
That we're not leading. And you know who's leading in the Security Council is the French.
The French are leading?
Yep.
That's not good.
It's not good.
Rick, Colonel, thank you.
Thanks,
all right,
Neil.
it stays what it is. No Islamic extremists.
Oh.